Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're from, particularly our friends in the United Kingdom. I think it's about 1 a.m. there, so they've got the coffee on. We've also got, it's great to see so many people. We've got a lot of people from Australia and New Zealand, but we've also got a cheerio from Canada, upstate New York. This is going to be fun. My name is Jennifer Mention. I am hosting on behalf of the Pi, and we are talking today about a view from Asia, 4 keys to success for student recruitment in China during and after COVID-19. We'll be chatting today about what Chinese students and education agencies are saying right now about their plans and expectations regarding an overseas education, the marketing and messaging that is going out, and also there's opportunities and initiatives that have come from this pandemic. So we'll be hearing from a great panel of speakers who you can see on the screen there. We'll hear from Michelle Liu from Grok Global, Head of Research, Advisory and Partnerships. Brett Berquist, Director of International at the University of Auckland, New Zealand, sporting a rather lovely pocket square. Barbara Sun, who is the Regional Director in China of the University of Essex. And Barbara, you are on brand. Congratulations. Love the T-shirt. And Hyman, who is a recruitment representative in China for Queen's University of Canada. We'll hear from our esteemed panel in just a moment, but I'd encourage you to take a look at the discussion panel titled Ask a Question. Have a look at the questions that are already there. Vote for ones that you might have a particular interest in, and please pose your own, because the panel would love to hear from you and answer the questions you have. We've also got a couple of polls running, so please take a look at those as well. Look, let's get underway. Introducing themselves, we'll start with Michelle Liu. Michelle, welcome.
Mainly research to help plan to identify for them. Another role company is also work closely with.
Okay, I think Michelle, we're having some issue with you. Oh, there we are. You're back. Let's see if we can try again.
Okay.
Okay. I think, Michelle, what we might do is throw over to you, Brett. Brett, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. You mean to vamp or to go into my presentation?
Just introduce yourself. Tell us all about you.
Right, in my pocket square. Hey, I'm Brett. I lead the international team at the University of Auckland. I've been down here for about 5 years. Came down from the States, where I did similar work at Michigan State and other universities in Michigan, and was in Europe for about the same period of time prior to that.
Okay. And you are currently in the land of the long white cloud?
Yes, here in Aotearoa, where it's very sunny, as you can see in my office. We're having a very beautiful sunny day here in Auckland. Things are going quite well in New Zealand. We had an extended period of time with no community transmission of COVID at all. We have had a few recent cases with returning Kiwis. But overall, the health situation here, knock on wood, has been better than could have been expected. But we are in quite a few conversations with our partners at other universities and our government around the conditions for quarantine and when and how we may begin to welcome returning and new students from overseas back to New Zealand.
I was only thinking about this morning. It must be very unusual for you, because in your everyday life, you're almost back to normal, but not.
Yeah, I mean, our everyday interactions and things, very few people are wearing masks. We're at the lowest level, so kind of monitoring things. But in terms of our interactions, one does hesitate about shaking hands. Some people are back to hugging and kissing, and some aren't. But yeah, overall, day to day in the streets and so on, New Zealand is back to normal, with the distinct difference that this is the longest period of not being on a plane I can remember in the past 20 years, which actually in many ways is turning out to be a welcome break.
Yes, definitely. Hyman, let's move on to you. You're in China at the moment. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hello, everyone. Greeting from Shanghai. My name is Hyman, and a little bit about myself. I graduated in bachelor's degree of economics from Simon Fraser University in Vancouver, BC, in 2015. After working in Vancouver for 3 years, I came back to China at the end of 2018. Then I was fortunate to be employed by Grok to fully dedicate to represent Queen's University for the recruitment activity in China. The Queen's entered the Chinese market in 2007 by opening the first liaison office in Fudan University in Shanghai. And I guess we are the first Canadian university to establish an office in China. So since 2014, and we had our in-country present in Chinese market. So basically my work is focused on the cooperation with the high schools, because we only have a partnership with IDP, who is an international agent. And mostly with my focus mostly with the international high school and the offshore schools in mainland China. So the idea I'm going to share are going to be mainly about the school, students, and the parents.
Okay. Definitely looking forward to hearing that. And we've already had some questions from the audience about that. Michelle and Barbara seem to have some connection issues. So Brett, we might throw to you first up. And you're going to talk about a focus on institutional partnerships and transnational education in response to the impacts of this pandemic. Tell me, what is the University of Auckland doing? You've got quite an interesting initiative about to start.
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to give a little background to that and sort of explain how we were using our previous strategies to respond to the current crisis. So the University of Auckland previously was not really a player in the T&E space. And by T&E, just to give a quick definition, transnational education, probably the easiest way to think about it is program mobility versus student mobility. So taking your program to the student. In our case, that means allowing a startup from offshore and then come to New Zealand to finish. So that's what we mean by T in a broad sense. And when I joined the university in 2015, looking at a set of growth targets and goals, we started working on a shift. We had been doing primarily what I might call retail recruitment. So recruiting students one by one at fairs, events, through agents and so on. And we weren't doing enough of what I call wholesale recruitment, working through partnerships, working through cohorts. And to be fair, the institution had been pretty down on anything which would give a student advanced standing. So it took some time to get the policy across, but a very robust discussion with the institution and the deans. And we launched a T&E strategy. Our main focus of that initially was China, of course, because we felt that while we're still getting significant yield from the retail market in China, we felt that we were a little bit behind the curve in terms of the wholesale partnership market. So we began working on that. And in so doing, we realized we needed more partnership, not only with institutions, where we already had some strong relationships, but we needed more representation in that space. So this is what led us to open an office in Beijing with Grok, where we have a staff member embedded to support what we're doing there. It was a very mature market for us, but we needed a different focus and more efficiency. We also expanded into India and Southeast Asia through some relationships with Grok and Sanamis for different reasons and different priorities. And then we began to develop joint programs working with a broker agent called the Australian Education Management Group. So they're based in Melbourne with a lot of staffing in China as well. And they were very important in helping us manage the approval process for programs that are approved by the Chinese Ministry of Education. So we have joint programs at Southwest University in Chongqing, where we're in the second wave of a program in data science, which is a 3+1+X. So the student studies for 3 years in China. They can finish there and get the Chinese degree, but they come across in year 4 and get a degree here and go on into the master's in data science. And that's been working very well for us. That operates under the regulations that we often refer to as the 4 1/3 rule in China regulations. And the nutshell on that is that we are required to deliver from New Zealand 1/3 of the core curriculum of their bachelor's program in China at Southwest University. We do that through kind of a fly-in accelerated delivery. So our academic staff go to China and they deliver an intensive seminar format where they get through a semester's paper in 2 to 3 weeks and then return home. So that's been working very well for us. And then we embarked, you can only put forward one joint program at a time every 3 years. So our next wave was to establish a joint institute, which is much harder. And we got approval for that. It was a very rigorous process. We had a 2-hour interview with an expert panel of advisors, 13 of them in Beijing, and they had very detailed questions. But we opened our joint college called Lin, AU for Auckland and Lin for Forest in Harbin, China, at Northeast Forestry University, which is another double first-class university in China. We did that in September. That has 3 different bachelor's, master's, and joint PhD, and will eventually see 1,200 students in a pipeline, with many of them transferring to Auckland at some point during their studies. That has a dedicated building, a dean, an associate dean, quite a few staff. We're in the early stages of that relationship. Now, we have many, many other relationships that we're doing, joint PhD strategies, research collaborations. We work with our colleagues in New Zealand on a New Zealand Studies Center at BEDA, at PKU, which is in its 12th year of existence. So lots of other things going on in China. But from a recruitment standpoint, those were the 2 key anchor partnerships in the joint program space. So that was going well, with a lot of work, but good results. Fast forward to the crisis, and at the time of the crisis, at the start of our semester 1, I was expecting nearly 4,000 students to enroll with us on campus in Auckland from China. When the border closed to China initially, half of them were here, half of them weren't. Half of them were still in China. So we scrambled to move a lot of our papers online, and we established individually approved study plans for the students in China. And about half of that, so 1,000, continued with us to study online to the end of semester 1. And we gave them a number of incentives to do that. But it also meant then that about 1,000 of them, or 1/4 of my market share, didn't enroll in semester 1, or they enrolled and then withdrew. They just said, online's not for me. So we began working on, what are we gonna do? We need another alternative. How can we offer them something else? As we try to get our borders back open, how can we offer them something else? So we went back to our key partners, including AMG, our broker agent, and had a conversation around this. We considered lots of other opportunities, but we felt that the only way we could actually operationalize our idea is to build on these existing really strong partnerships. So what we are offering are China learning centers based at each of those institutions, Southwest and Northeast Forestry University, where students will still study online. So it's University of Auckland credit, University of Auckland academic staff, but moving on to a Chinese campus in the social dynamic of being part of a learning cohort and with local learning facilitators. So we're providing the learning facilitators and some relocation support at no charge to the student. Of course, they're paying our regular international tuition, which is quite high. So we're offering them a third way. We're saying to them, if you want to defer and wait until you can come here to start your studies, that's fine, we'll help you. If you're happy to continue studying online, and many are, they're reporting a very good experience, we're very happy for that to continue. If you're frustrated with starting your degree online, or you don't want to continue a second semester of studying from your bedroom, here's an option to move to a Chinese partner campus, study online with us, but in a more traditional setting with a local learning facilitator. And there's some other wrinkles to that. We're also doing a post-Gaokao semester, September to December, and some other projects. And some of that work was already part of our business development planning with our partners. What we've been doing here is trying to see the silver lining. There's always a silver lining in every crisis. This is a pretty big crisis, but it really has allowed us to accelerate some things which would have taken us 2 or 3 years. We've said, okay, what's it going to take to do it now? It brings a lot of noise, a lot of challenges, a lot of road bumps, but we've tried to look on the bright side. And what we've done in China is to offer a third path, a third alternative. And the response to that has been very strong. So I think I'll conclude with that, but that's just one arc of the story of what we've been doing in China before and in response to the crisis.
Great, thank you very much. It looks like we have Barbara and Michelle back. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is just one of the challenges you will encounter in China, like international internet not stable. Sorry, we are back. We changed the location.
Fantastic, Michelle. We might come back to you, and please just give us a quick introduction about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Michelle Liu. I'm the head of research advisory and partnerships at Grok Global Services. I have been in this sector for over 10 years, mainly on market research and institutional partnership development. Another part of my role as a company is also to help our client institutions to support their in-country teams. I know, as Brad mentioned, University of Auckland also deployed their team in China through Grok. So part of my role is to support clients like University of Auckland. So for any of you who are not familiar with Grok Global Services, I just want to take a few seconds to introduce who we are and what we do. Grok is a professional service firm. We help institutions, schools, and government bodies in international education sector. We are solely specialized in international education. We provide services ranging from market research, partnership development, also marketing, in-country representation. In response to COVID-19, we also offer contingent resources to support institutions who do not have on-ground staff. We operate in China, Southeast Asia, and India. So very glad to join the panel for this webinar.
Great. And Barbara, please tell us about yourself.
Hi, Jen and the rest of colleagues in this platform. Good morning. And this is Barbara Sam, greeting from Beijing, and I'm Regional Director of China at University of Essex, based in Grok. And I have worked for UK higher education institutions in China for more than 12 years and a Chinese university for 4 years. In the years working for the Essex in country, we have kept expanding our business scales in China. So I hope we can have some interesting communication with all of you today. Thank you.
Excellent. Michelle, let's go back to you. And from your point of view, which is quite high level, what's the current state in terms of international student recruitment activities?
Sure. I want to touch upon a little bit about the overall market about coronavirus in China. China has gone back to normalcy largely since April. Our offices in Beijing, Shanghai, and Guangzhou has reopened since May. Of course, there are ups and downs, like there's a smaller scale outbreak in Beijing in June. But after the past few weeks, the situation is largely under control. Like there are no new cases in the past 2 days in Beijing. So outside of Beijing, there are minimal cases, but most are from international arrivals. So by large, the country is getting back to normal, and we are seeing our staff start to travel in especially South China to attend Asian events. Especially the Gaokao exam just finished yesterday in most provinces. Some agents are trying to set up the summer education fairs in China. Yeah, but so far most events are still online, I would say. Yeah.
And as Brett said, with every storm, every cloud comes a silver lining. What are those silver linings that you're seeing? What are some of the initiatives that you are seeing coming out of this crisis?
Sure. The past 6 months has been very disruptive for international education, for institutions in student recruitment. But we have seen a remarkable level of innovation and flexibility, which I will say these are the silver lining for this industry overall. I will just share a few examples in few areas. For example, in admission and student recruitment, we see while in March, April, those standardized tests like IELTS, TOEFL are all canceled in the country and in other countries as well. So we are seeing a number of institutions, they are trying to accept online language test results like Duolingo, and some institutions also innovated to have their own online tests so students can take remotely. Some institutions, they waive application fees. Those are all measures that are quite welcomed by students and families in the market. I will also mention another thing is very innovative in admission is that there's an initiative that Grok supported. It's done by a company called Concourse Global Enrollment. It's a technology platform serving high school counselors, students, and universities. There are thousands of students on Concourse platform, and Concourse innovated a new admission process where university can extend offer letters to students based on their certified student profile, including academic, record, what program they want to study. But students do not need to submit application to get an offer letter. Normally, this will be quite difficult to get around admission at most universities, but very surprisingly, we see this is very well received in Grok kind institutions. So that is another thing we are very impressed that how institutions are adapting to this new landscape in this industry.
And it's a growing industry, isn't it? It's growing each year.
Yes. So in 2019, there are around 700,000 students, Chinese students studying abroad. For the past few years, the average increase rate is around like 6 or 7%.
Oh, now we just have a question from the audience, Michelle, and I'd like to pose it to you. It's something certainly being in Australia we've noticed. Are political tensions, which are often in the news, an issue when dealing with prospective students?
At this current climate, I would say political tensions is a small factor in students and parents' decision making. Students and parents, they are more concerned about students' health and well-being while studying abroad. Political reasons is not that a big factor for families. That is what I can see. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Michelle. Barbara, we might come over to you. From UK institutions' point of view, what are you seeing? What are the impacts and changes that you are seeing at the moment?
Yeah, during the COVID-19, it definitely impacted on our recruitment from China. When COVID-19 outbreak at the beginning of the 2020, in China, we have worked on how we can solve the problems of the closure of health centers, lockdown of campuses, visa centers, and no international flights, and so on. Quickly, Essex, as what Michelle has mentioned just now, we have developed contingency plan, for example, introducing online programs, no matter the main course or the summer pre-sessional courses, and the flexible entry requirements. So due to the approaching of the autumn term starting, we have faced new challenges from the difficulties in uncertainty of global travel restrictions, converting unfirmed offer holders, and the safety and well-being of students and staff on campuses. So these are all the challenges we right now have.
So you've obviously got a dual focus. You've got those recruitment activities, but you've got the student experience as well. How are you communicating, and what are you communicating with students?
Yeah, at the University of Essex, we have managed our market in China during the COVID-19 based on our central communication plan. We deliver the message of "We are still Essex" to stakeholders, that we are maintaining the quality of our education, and even courses in autumn term will be taught in a way that blends face-to-face learning with a range of virtual lectures and other learning activities. So we ensure this messaging can be spread out to our current students and potential applicants and offer holders.
And beyond the next term, how far ahead are you looking in terms of student recruitment and experience?
For our school, for those, we have been advised by our partner agents that student recruitment have the difficulties, because in China we are the main market recruiting from agent channel. So right now they have difficulties to have the same number of applications of the first 6 months of this year, so which will impact on the recruitment of the spring term and autumn term of 2021. So it's for COVID-19, it's a long-term impact.
Great, thank you. There is a question actually here that I think, Barbara, you might be well placed to answer. Was agents' business and their models of serving students already changing before COVID-19? And do institutions need to change the way they work with agents?
Yeah, it has changed. Previously for agency, because I have been in this industry for many, many years. At that time, we only need to give the advice on the programs, which should be programs that students can choose. And now agencies have to develop and add more types of businesses to students and parents. So we can see they are asking for the international summer school. They're asking enhanced programs for students to get more experience and more knowledge and of overseas academics, and also the after graduation, the employability work to be provided. So all these businesses, and we can see many agencies, especially the big agencies now, introduced in their business. And for the education institution, we pick up those queries and we develop the products accordingly, and so we can engage with our students earlier in advance.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'd like to add something to the point Barbara made. Like agents, they are trying to also expand their business lines. Except for studying overseas consulting, we'll see more agents are trying to serve students during their preparation for studying abroad. We call, in this industry, we call like the background upgrade, especially for applying US institutions. Students, they need a very strong academic, also like internships, professional background. So that is what the sector, like the agency, is trying to tap into. They collaborate with overseas institutions to have like a summer school, and also collaborate with industry to provide internship for those students, so they have a competitive background to be admitted. That's just one thing I want to add to the education agency.
Great, thank you. We've got some great questions coming in from the audience, and please keep them coming. At the moment, though, I'd like to throw over to the very patient Hyman Shu, who has been waiting for his turn. Hyman, you're working on the ground closely with prospective students and their families. Tell us, what's that experience like at the moment?
Actually, there's for the current student and I mean the incoming student, the main concern, they have the three main concerns at the current stage. So the first thing is they worry about the quality of the lecture delivered remotely. And the second one is that they want to know what kind of measure will be implemented to prevent students from the COVID-19 once they arrived in Canada. And the third is that they worry about that to apply the study permit before September, and the process being delayed compared to the last year. Right now, the processing time of the study permits extended to from 4 weeks to 8 to 10 weeks. So there's a lot of challenge for the student who wants to study on campus. And those are the three main concerns. And for the prospective student, I think I haven't get really in touch with the families, but I've been heard some question from them that they worry about if they are able to afford the tuition, because some family, they got impact from the for the financial reason. So that will be the one thing. And the other thing is that they want to know if the class of 2025, are they able to see the Canadian institution get back to the normal in 1 year later? They're waiting for the vaccine. I think that's the every people in every country, they are expecting to see. So those are the main concern and the worry from the parents and families.
It's certainly a challenge, isn't it? If you had the answer to those questions, you'd be a very rich and powerful man, I think. There is a question from the audience, and you may have mostly answered it, but if there's an opportunity to add anything else. How has the pandemic changed Chinese families' perceptions of the value of studying abroad and their willingness to study abroad?
I think it's a big challenge for the family to make a decision right now, and it's quite struggling time for them. I know some parents, they ask that if they are able to have their kids starting to have like a 2+2 program, which we do have, but not typically for the undergraduate program. The second thing is that students really want to get engaged with the institution more closely and frequently to have the most updated information about what we are going to do and what's the plan for the next coming recruitment cycle. So we are trying to we are working really hard to get engaged with students and the parents to make a plan for them. For example, we introduced the online program, and before the September, we had a lot of webinar, live chat to introduce our online program and help them and comfort them to encourage them to join us and to have a look at what's the study format going to look like in the coming semester. And on the side of the counselor, I mean, the counselor really have an impact and influence on the family's decision. So we do provide some training for them and give them the right information and to deliver to the families.
Hyman, given the state that we're in and there's a lot of uncertainty, what are you doing now and what are you offering to prospective students and parents to continue this? Because obviously the recruitment pipeline can't stop, it needs to continue. So what are you doing to continue that?
The first thing I want to talk about is to establish virtual communication. So right now, everyone, I think it's been for a while that we are unable to travel and we are unable to meet the parents and students face to face. So the first thing we do is to establish the virtual communication, and we use the Zoom, which is the very first and the most frequent platform that we use for the weekly webinar or any drop-in session. And normally the winter semester is the time for it's this January, not the next January. So the winter semester is the time for the school revisiting and student approaching. But after the announcement of the restriction and the school shutdown, and in the February, the virtual communication becomes necessary for us, for all the parties. So we started to have the themed webinar right after the Chinese New Year. And then with the increased number of the audience and the length of the webinar, we realized that we have to make it weekly and even to have a drop-in session, which is learned from our Queen's International Center. So it really helped us to expand the coverage, especially for the families from the second and the third town cities. And so I believe we will continue doing this in the coming recruitment cycle. Other than that, I do recommend to use some localized platform other than the YouTube. We do have some similar video sharing platform in China. So it's quite popular for the young kids right now. We really benefit a lot from the virtual communication. And the first thing is that it's a good chance for us to adopt new measures and the channels to engage with applicants. And we probably not be more open-minded than what we are now. So it's also a good chance for us to test the recruitment team's creativity and capability and the intelligence of the problem solving. So the virtual communication is not only externally, but also internally. And as I mentioned earlier, that the virtual communication is able to extend the recruitment coverage. So especially for the student from the public school of national curriculum, they had not too much chance to meet the representative from the institution. So with this kind of method, we are able to talk to them online. And what else? The virtual communication comes with less restriction on the time and the space. So comparing with what we travel before, you waste a lot of time on the way, and you waste a lot of time to arrange a schedule between different schools. But right now, we can even have the webinar for multiple schools students. So I know the number of the international schools been growing in the past 3 or 5 years. So it's a fast-growing industry with both increased demand and also the investment. So although the impact of COVID-19 and the voice of anti-globalization brings negative influence, but the trends of the international schools and the trends of the international school development in the long run should be positive. So the virtual communication should be important complement method for us to do a better job in the recruitment work.
There is a question. You mentioned some of the platforms using that you're using, and Brett, you may want to weigh on this as well. Do you face any technical difficulties? Sorry, I've just lost the question. Delivering courses in China, for example, students can't get onto the platforms in China due to internet restrictions.
If we basically switch to the platform, the first thing is that the Zoom is not restricted in China, so which is good. And the second is that basically I just did a little bit job to download the video from the YouTube and upload in localized platforms such as Bilibili and Youku. So it really helps students and parents to watch and listen those videos and audios without internet restriction.
Brett, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I want to talk about a little. Oh, sorry.
No, please continue.
Yeah. I think there's one thing I want to cover is about the WeChat. The WeChat, I think, is an unspoken secret for the foreign institution who really want to do a job in China. So it's a really good platform to use. And if anyone is interested about this, I'm really open to discuss you after this. Yeah.
Great. Brett?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in there. Our whole team's been on WeChat for years, so that's how we get a lot of our business done. WeChat, WhatsApp, back and forth all day. And we've been, we switched a lot of our webinars over to VooV, which seems to be working a bit better for us in China than Zoom. We are Canvas users in terms of our learning management system. And because we were using that already here on campus and the speed with which we went online, we decided to continue to use that. We did have some speed issues initially, and then we contracted with a dedicated VPN that is approved by the Chinese ministry. It's a sort of a subcontractor of Alibaba. Anyway, it operates inside China behind the firewall, and we implemented that about 10 days into the transition and saw an immediate improvement in terms of students' ability to access our content and so on. So it is a challenge, it's not insurmountable, and quite a few institutions have worked out how to deliver effectively.
Now, Barbara, you also had mentioned that you are using some of these platforms. How have your experience been with them?
Yes, indeed. When carrying out our not teaching activities, but the recruitment activities, webinars have become major mechanism for us to communicate with our students and parents since February and onwards this year. And in terms of the platforms for the webinars, we use various kinds of webinars, like trendy Bilibili, and that's a new video live stream webinar we can use. We have the Zoom, we have Tencent meeting, and all these activities have been planned and carried out successfully for us to meet our candidates. And we're quite satisfied with number of turnouts for each of them. And when we promoting all these webinars to our students, we use our long existing social media platforms to circulate the information. For example, the Weibo and the WeChat. And we have benefited from those platforms we are using, and we are going to keep investing our time and efforts to do those activities.
Okay, great, thank you. Look, there's some great questions coming in. Brett Steele, yourself have got quite a multifaceted one for you, so are you ready? So your third option to your Chinese students to move your Chinese partner universities for on-site study, University of Auckland academic faculty will teach the courses remotely, and will all of the courses or just a percentage of the courses?
Yeah, that's a good question. So in terms of what we're doing right now in this space, yes, we are simply telling the students that they may continue or start studying with us online. So all of the course delivery, the instruction, the transcript, the assessment is coming from Auckland. But we are working with our partner institutions to give them a campus location and a campus experience. And then we are contracting additional on-site learning facilitators, tutors, to provide them extra support. So essentially, they're paying normal tuition, but we're providing them quite a bit of additional tutorial support locally. So we're not running into problems of QA and so on, because essentially it's the same QA as if a student were studying online with us independently in their room or at whatever location in New Zealand or offshore. So it really is, it's sort of an odd hybrid space. One wouldn't design that intentionally. It really is just trying to develop a viable alternative, given the comments we were receiving last semester. The polling, the industry has been producing some pretty significant polling of student opinions and then breaking those down by market. And it's clear that while some students are quite content to study online and having a good experience, particularly those who are getting close to completing their studies, or wouldn't you want to just finish up even if it's difficult? But students at the early stages, particularly undergraduate students, who, part of study is that whole social interaction experience, right? Remember when MOOCs came out a decade ago and it was going to shut down the universities and so on? I mean, it's a very valuable thing to have MOOCs, but nothing replaces that experience of being together with like-minded young people, processing your learning, having social experiences. So we were looking for a compromise space there, but it is entirely content delivered from the University of Auckland. So we don't really run into any QA issues.
You sort of mentioned, the online versus on-campus experience. Do you think at the beginning of this, when we're in the early stages, students were quite willing to jump online to continue their study and not disrupt? But now as we're evolving and this is dragging on, they're demanding more and different? Absolutely.
Look, I've got 3 daughters, college age, some of them in postgraduate, some of them in undergraduate. And they all 3 went through that situation. My eldest is actually doing her master's here, and she actually started a daily podcast on the COVID experience and lockdown in New Zealand. But I was able to sort of measure on 3 different continents what my own kids' experience was of suddenly having to move online and the ins and outs of that. And it's a very personal experience. Some of it depends on how much time and effort has been put into it by the instructor. The worst thing is when instructor simply feels that, oh, well, I'm just going to keep delivering the way I always do, but instead of being in person, it's online. I mean, that's a disaster. You have to really stop and think about recrafting it, readdressing it, having interactive ways of connecting with the student, which most of our instructors have done. I mean, when they have the time, that's what they do. When we went online so quickly, we had about 48 hours. What we actually did is we just shut down for a week. We suspended all teaching. And then we deployed a lot of learning designers and a lot of extra support to go out into the faculties and help them prepare for this shift. Some of it was technical, but a lot of it was rethinking the pedagogy of how you deliver that. And so that works really well for some students. Other students have a very different learning style and they need that in-person reinforcement. So what we were simply trying to do is to offer a viable alternative. We do think that those who are studying online with us are having a successful experience. But I mean, just ask yourself that question, would you really want to envisage another entire semester of it being entirely online? If you're very motivated, disciplined, you've got a good learning environment. One thing we've seen in this crisis, this has nothing to do with nationality, domestic and international. It's created a lot of mental health issues. I mean, the coping mechanisms, the routine, the mutual support mechanisms that are there kind of went out the window. So that's been a big part of it as well, just allowing people, even our staff, our colleagues, space to feel what they're feeling, to not expect the same kind of output. So for us, it really was just a diversification strategy. We've actually been impressed at how many of our students are willing to continue online or initiate and start online. It's been very high. We haven't lost a lot of students, but we just wanted to have a viable, in-between space for those who needed it.
Look, while I've got you and your brain's still active, we've got another question for you. Do you think T&E will be a trend in the future? And is running a joint program cost effective?
Is running a joint program cost effective? Well, I see some people in the questions columns who are probably more qualified to answer that than me, like Peter Burgess, who's an old hand and expert in Australia on T&E, but I guess he can't answer, so I'll take it. Will it be a trend in the future? Absolutely. I think it will be even more important when we get to the other side of this crisis. As I said in my earlier comments, I think China was well engaged in a gradual transition from retail to wholesale, from one-on-one to partnership recruitment. And that's why we were in that space for the long haul. I think that will only become more important. I think students are going to increasingly want to have more control over choosing the mode of delivery and the location of delivery. So I think they will be demanding more programming which they can start in their home country, even if they then later intend to go to the partner country. So first question, absolutely. Second question, is it cost effective? Well, there's all sorts of business models for running a joint program. Sometimes, if you're delivering the full degree offshore, the business model comes down to sharing overheads and revenues at the offshore location. If your program is primarily about getting a transfer rate for them to come onshore, then typically the receiving institution builds its business case on the revenue received during that time. There's a whole range of ways of doing it, and it does take an awful lot of work to get the policy right. Being successful in getting approval for a joint program approved by the Chinese Ministry of Education is incredibly difficult. There's about a 20% success rate to that. And I don't think we would have been able to do that on our own without the support of AMG, who's very successful in that space. So it's a lot of investment, a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of senior level travel, and then maintenance travel, and flying our faculty in to deliver some of the teaching is a lot. But if the recruitment goals and the transfer rate that you've built into your business case are realized, the payback is very significant. In our particular case, it's meant that we have been able to pre-fund some of the increased support mechanisms we needed to have in place for students coming from these programs into that faculty. And we funded them in advance rather than being reactive, based on the fact that we could count on where this flow was going. Now, that was before the pandemic crisis, but so it does have a number of benefits if you can really roll up your sleeves and do it in an effective way.
Thank you. We'll give you a break.
If I can, I can add something to this question is, I also agree with Brad that the benefits of TNE has proven to be significant during the pandemic. For example, we know like New York University and Duke University, they will have their upcoming new students study in their branch campuses in China, like Shanghai, New York, Auckland, and Duke, and of course other branch campuses. They are offering students this option, which is seamless. And we're also seeing, of course, what the University of Auckland has been doing in China, having the China Learning Center is very innovative. We are seeing more US institutions trying to do the similar setup with leveraging their Chinese partnerships. They are offering students like exchange year at the Chinese partner university. They can study in the local campus, study their courses, and then get the credit transferred to the US university. That is there's another example of the benefits of TNE. Talk specifically to joint programs, joint institutions, because they are very restrict the regulations by MOE, like the program approved need to be in a 4+0 model, which this may be like financially difficult for foreign institutions. But actually the surveys for students in joint programs and joint institutions shows that a quite high number of students still would like to study abroad for at least 1 or 2 years. So I would say having students finally progress to the foreign campus is still very high chance to make the financial model more profitable. Yeah.
Okay, let's jump back to a focus on students. We've got another question. What's the most effective way to market to students in China, and which platforms?
I can add my observations. I think Barbara and Hyman also mentioned the marketing landscape in China is very difficult to the rest of the world. There are homegrown platforms like WeChat, Weibo, which are equivalent to Facebook and Twitter. And there are like a Youku, Bilibili, which are equivalent to YouTube. So I would say those platforms will be a very important tools for foreign institutions to market in China. Like WeChat is like the #1 platform that Chinese people will use. Of course, there are also like quickly new apps developing. For example, TikTok is very popular for live streaming and short video marketing in China as well.
Barbara, Hyman, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, very much similar platforms that mentioned by Michelle, and another platform we are thinking is the Zhihu, which is the searching engine, not exactly like Baidu, but more popular for people to search for academic advice or asking about the experience. And this could be a really good platform for us to communicate with our potential students, and we can see not for institutions ourselves to feedback. Actually, people can see the comments and experience shared by the current students or alumni, and actually other people's words making more impact than our comments to some extent. So we currently look into all these kind of potential platforms, and especially for this post-COVID-19, and people's habit of getting messaging in China is not only visiting agents' offices and to face the agent consultants, but also searching the information by themselves, the parents and the students. All these digital platforms could be a revolution for our international education for the next following years.
Thank you. Hyman?
Yes, I just want to add a little bit about the WeChat part. And actually, this is the app similar with the WhatsApp. So the primary function of WeChat is messaging. And it helped me to deliver the first-hand information to the applicants, because I always get a direct connection with them. And it also integrates with multiple functions such as a mini survey, moments, subscription, live chat, and voting. And all these tools help me to conduct more direct and efficient support to the student. And the main purpose of using these tools is not to replace agents or the guidance of counselors, but just to make the student more comfortable and more secured when they come to you, and you can just simply say yes. So that's the reason why we use WeChat as the main tool. And I also want to say that the demand of the different platform and different social media is really based on what you want to target and how many students really want to recruit every year in China. So our target was not that big compared with other like University of Toronto, British Columbia, and McGill. So every year we only have a couple hundred students. So we will want to provide more precise and more detailed service and direct services with the students. So WeChat is really good for us to use, connect with the student. And I started to use WeChat in last October, and within just 3 to 4 months that my follower on the WeChat, number of the follower on the WeChat growing from 70 to 1,000 just within 4 months. So it's a really good tool for you to share with the student and the parents. And the Chinese parents, they prefer to get information from different sources. So having direct connection with you by using WeChat means a lot to them. And if they can speak to someone really represents from the university, and sometimes you could be the superhero for them. They always come to you and ask the question instead of going to the agent. Because even though the answer you give to them is going to be the same as what they're going to get from the agent, but it just makes them to more confident to having the answer from you. So that's for the parents. And for the students, I believe I find myself too old to understand them sometimes. They have so many information they can get nowadays, so many tools and sources to find those information they need. So the thing is that when the high school student watch too much and hears too much, they start to lose themselves. So what I did is to simply help them to distinguish between the multiple resources and tell them what's the correct information and what's the right way they need to follow. So that's my experience of using WeChat.
Great, thank you. Look, I'm very conscious of time. We've got some other great questions in there. I think I might just finish this one before I go back to the panel for some final thoughts. Are agents and on-the-ground staff seeing a growth or decrease in interest for studying abroad with the disappearance of school visits and large international fairs? And how are leads being generated this year in China? I think, Hyman, you've mainly covered that, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
About the virtual field, yeah, sure. Personally, at current stage, I do not have too much experience on the virtual field. The reason why I bring this up is that I believe it's been considered as a substitute when the actual field got canceled. So redesign the recruitment material supplies such as handbook, brochures, and the presentation to make them more screen friendly will be really necessary for the virtual field. And according to the research, audience tends to lose patience more easily when they face in front of the screen instead of facing do the face-to-face presentation. So I found myself being a disadvantaged position to change my tone, speed, or even the speech content without observing the face of the audience. So the presentation of the virtual field must be different from the actual field. And I got a response from some school counselors and high school for the virtual field at current stage. For all the invitation letter I received so far, the virtual field is the plan B. And the further policy of the individual school visit will be announced accordingly. And some of the high school, particularly the public school, are still holding their response regarding the university fail in this fall.
All right, we are almost out of time. I'd like to go around and just in summary from each of you, in a few words, what would you say is a key to student recruitment success in China during and after COVID? Brett, let's start with you.
Sure, and just to jump back on the social media front, I would actually venture that any Australia, New Zealand recruiter on this call is already on WeChat. I mean, that's well established down here. We have found Grok to be really helpful. They have a social media branch, and some of our social media is managed here, some of it managed with Grok. We have several thousand followers on our Weibo account. Some of the marketing we've been doing on these China Learning Centers have had upwards of 7 million views. So if you have a concentrated strategy and you work with someone in market, you can get quite large visibility, but it's important to set up parameters of what you're aiming for and then to track the performance of that in terms of your advertising spend. And having a partner in market like Grok is very helpful in that space. We've been seeing quite a spike in demand. I think some of that is due to all the wonderful things we've done in the crisis. I don't know. I think it's really about New Zealand's really moved to best in class in terms of how we've managed the health crisis so far. It's difficult to say that too strongly because that could change on any given day. But right now, I think we have a lot of the planet looking to our leadership in that space, and many Chinese families seeing New Zealand as an increasingly good space to send their students to. The challenge we're having is we're in the middle of a lengthy conversation to determine how and when it will be appropriate and safe to bring international students back in. So we're having a huge spike in applications and demand, but also needing to manage expectations about when they might be able to join us, which is another reason why we offer this third alternative.
Thank you. Barbara, your one key in a few words to student recruitment success.
Yeah, for us, for the student recruitment, we would like to say to be more adaptable for the changing world. For example, the presenting skills on the digital platform could be a very new thing for all the recruiters in China. So adaptable. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Hyman?
Yes, my suggestion is to keep active engagement with applicants and at the same time to maintain open communication channels, both physically and virtually by all means. And answer the question from the student as soon as you can. Yeah.
Great. And Michelle, we started with you. Let's finish with you. what's your final words?
Thank you. I have talked about admission flexibility, and also other panelists will talk about the marketing. Another thing, I also see one question from the audience is like whether agents will, whether this will change how institution can support agent channel while offline events have been canceled. Maybe some agent office has been closed down. But I actually also want to emphasize from the past few months experience, like there has been great online conversations with agent partner students, but still it turns out like a face-to-face interaction, having someone in country who understands the language in the same time zone, who understands the culture, the background, who understands the real concern of students, turns out to be very important. So I would say the last key I want to add is also to try to have more in-country support for your institution for student recruitment.
Great, thank you, Michelle. Now we did have a question from Duncan about how and who to contact at Grok. So can you answer that?
Yeah, feel free to email me those questions. I'm happy to answer them or having a further conversation with them.
Great. I'd like to thank all of our panelists today for sharing your experiences and your information. Thank you to the audience for being so involved in this. We didn't get around to all the questions, so I do apologise for that. But thanks to everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon or evening or morning wherever you are in the world.
Thank you, everyone. Great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.